My name is Tiffany Mitchell, and I was born into what appeared to be an ordinary middle-class family in a tranquil suburban neighborhood. Our street, lined with neatly trimmed lawns and modest two-story homes, was the epitome of quiet normalcy. My parents, David and Sarah Mitchell, were consumed by an unrelenting passion for child development theories and early learning methodologies. Our living room resembled a small library, with towering stacks of parenting books spilling over coffee tables and shelves. My mother, in particular, was always animatedly discussing the latest theories she'd unearthed from her nightly reading. "Sarah, don't you think we're pushing a bit too hard?" I recall my father asking one evening, his brow furrowed with concern as Mom patiently attempted to teach me basic arithmetic. I was barely 3 years old, clutching a worn teddy bear as I stared at the numbers scrawled on a whiteboard. "No, David, these are the critical developmental years," Mom retorted, her voice brimming with conviction as she held up a vibrant flash card adorned with shapes and numbers. "The research is clear. We must start early to unlock their potential." Reflecting on those moments now, I can't help but smile at the irony. Despite their tireless efforts, hours spent drilling me with flashcards and educational games, my development was utterly unremarkable. I sat up, took my first steps, and spoke my first words precisely on schedule, no prodigy to be found. Yet, rather than embracing the natural pace of childhood, my parents viewed me as their initial failed experiment, a rough sketch that fell short of their lofty aspirations. Everything shifted dramatically when my younger sister, Jessica, entered the world. I was 3 years old, still navigating the world with wide-eyed curiosity, when our home transformed into what felt like a rigorous baby genius boot camp. By then, Mom had enrolled in specialized parenting courses, determined to avoid the perceived missteps she believed she'd made with me. The contrast in how they raised Jessica was striking. Where I had simple toys, plastic blocks, and stuffed animals, Jessica was surrounded by educational development tools designed to stimulate her young mind. My picture books, filled with whimsical tales of talking animals, were replaced for Jessica with cognitive enhancement materials, boasting complex patterns and problem-solving exercises. Every milestone she achieved was met with fanfare. Her first words, which came months earlier than mine, were celebrated with joyous applause. Her early steps were documented with fervent pride, and her ability to solve puzzles meant for older children was heralded as evidence of her brilliance. My grandparents, Peter and Eleanor Mitchell, lived just a few blocks away in a cozy bungalow that smelled of freshly baked cookies and lavender. Their home became my sanctuary, a refuge from the relentless pressure of my parents' expectations. Unlike Mom and Dad, Grandma and Grandpa treated Jessica and me with equal affection, showering us both with love and attention. I vividly remember one sun-dappled Sunday afternoon when I was about 5, nestled on Grandma Eleanor's lap as she read us stories from a tattered fairy tale book. Jessica sat beside us, her tiny fingers tracing the colorful illustrations. "Both of my granddaughters are perfect just as they are," Grandma declared warmly, handing us each a chocolate chip cookie, still warm from the oven. Her words, simple yet profound, stood in stark contrast to Mom's pursed lips and muttered remarks about acknowledging exceptional talent. "Sarah," Grandma said firmly during one tense family dinner, her voice steady but laced with disapproval, "children need love, not pressure. They're not science experiments." Mom bristled, her fork pausing midair. "Mother, you don't understand modern parenting," she replied curtly. Dad quickly leapt to her defense, his voice rising with conviction. "Jessica shows extraordinary promise, Eleanor. We have a responsibility to nurture that potential." I sat silently at the table, pushing peas around my plate with my fork, already acutely aware of my place in their eyes. To my parents, I was merely the practice run, the imperfect draft before they crafted their masterpiece. Elementary school was a relatively unremarkable chapter of my life. I wasn't at the top of my class, but I wasn't struggling either. I forged friendships, diligently completed my homework, and reveled in the simple joys of being a typical kid. My report cards were peppered with B's, punctuated by the occasional A, which I considered a perfectly respectable achievement. My parents, however, barely acknowledged them, their attention wholly consumed by Jessica's burgeoning brilliance. When Jessica started school, the disparity in our treatment became even more pronounced. Unlike me, who attended the local public school with its chipped desks and crowded classrooms, Jessica was enrolled in the prestigious Wellington Academy for gifted children. They rarely accept children so young, Mom announced proudly at dinner one evening, her eyes gleaming with triumph, but they were thoroughly impressed with her test scores. I nearly choked on my milk. Wellington Academy was the elite private school across town, with its sprawling campus, state-of-the-art facilities, and an Olympic-sized swimming pool. The tuition alone was rumored to cost more than a new car. Yet the spending didn't stop there. Whenever Jessica complained about her rigorous workload or threw a tantrum over math homework, my parents' solution was to lavish her with rewards. "I don't want to do math today," she'd whine, her voice tinged with petulance. "It's too hard." Mom would smile indulgently and say, "Tell you what, sweetie, if you finish your homework, we'll go to the toy store and get that dollhouse you've been eyeing." It didn't take long for Jessica to master this game. Soon, every minor accomplishment came with a price tag. "If I get an A on this test, can I have the new iPad? Or I'll do extra credit if you buy me those designer shoes." Meanwhile, I sat at the kitchen table, quietly completing my assignments without fanfare or reward, my efforts unnoticed. Once, I earned the highest score in my class on a science project, a meticulously crafted model of the solar system I'd spent weeks constructing from styrofoam balls and coat hangers. Proudly, I showed it to Mom, expecting at least a smile. She glanced at it briefly and nodded. "That's nice, honey," she said distractedly. "Oh, did you hear? Jessica was accepted into the advanced mathematics program." Her words landed like a punch, deflating my moment of triumph. The final blow came when I was 13. I had spent months decorating my bedroom, the larger of the two children's rooms, with posters of my favorite bands, Polaroid photos of my friends, and strings of fairy lights that cast a warm glow over my space. It wasn't luxurious, but it was mine, a haven where I could escape the constant comparisons. One evening, Jessica stormed into the living room, where my parents were watching the evening news. "I want Tiffany's room," she declared, hands planted firmly on her hips. "Mine is too small for all my things, and I need more space for my study area." I looked up from my book, certain my parents would dismiss her audacious demand. Instead, they exchanged a thoughtful glance. "You know, that makes sense," Dad said slowly. "Jessica does have a lot more equipment and educational materials." My heart plummeted. "What? No!" I protested, my voice cracking with disbelief. "That's my room. I've had it since I was little." But my pleas were ignored. The very next day, while I was at school, they moved my belongings into Jessica's cramped room. When I returned home, I found Jessica already settled into my former space, her expensive desk dominating the spot where my bed once stood. "This is so unfair," I shouted, tears streaming down my cheeks as I stood in the doorway of my new, claustrophobic room. "Life isn't fair, Tiffany," Mom said dismissively, her tone sharp with finality. "Your sister needs the space, more than you do. Don't be selfish." I slammed the door and collapsed onto the bed, its frame creaking under my weight in the too small space. That night, staring at the unfamiliar walls closing in around me, I realized a painful truth. In this house, I would always be relegated to second place. As high school graduation loomed, I poured my heart into planning my future. I spent countless evenings researching colleges, drafting application essays, and envisioning a life where my efforts would finally matter. My grades were solid, and my resume boasted a respectable array of extracurriculars, volleyball, student council, and volunteer work at the local animal shelter. While I wasn't aimed for Ivy League prestige, I set my sights on several reputable state universities with robust business programs, dreaming of a career where I could carve out my own path. That fateful Sunday roast, however, shattered those dreams. Grandma and Grandpa had joined us for dinner, the dining room filled with the savory aroma of Mom's signature pot roast. Jessica was, as usual, regaling everyone with tales of her latest academic triumph, basking in Mom and Dad's adoring smiles. "Tiffany," Grandma Eleanor said, turning to me with genuine warmth, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. "Tiffany, tell us about your college plans. Where are you thinking of applying?" I sat up straighter, eager to share my aspirations. "Well," I began, my voice steady with excitement, "I've been looking at State University's business program, and—" Mom interrupted me abruptly, her fork clinking sharply against her plate. "About that, Tiffany," she said, her tone cold and resolute. "Your father and I have been meaning to tell you. We've decided we won't be able to help with your college tuition. We need to save all our resources for Jessica's education. She's got a real shot at the Ivy League, and that's not going to be inexpensive." The room spun around me. "You can't be serious," Grandpa Peter said, his fork clattering onto his plate as his face flushed with disbelief. "What about Tiffany's future?" Mom sighed, her voice dripping with condescension as if explaining a simple fact to a toddler. "Look, we need to be realistic," she said. "Jessica is gifted. Jessica has extraordinary potential. Tiffany is ordinary. She can find a job right out of high school, or maybe take some community college classes if she saves enough." Grandma's voice trembled with fury. "How dare you dismiss your own daughter like this?" she demanded, her hand shaking. "Oh, please," Dad snapped, his face reddening with defensiveness. "Let's not pretend, Eleanor. Tiffany's never shown any exceptional abilities. Higher education would be a waste wasted on her. We're just being practical." I couldn't endure it any longer. The walls seemed to close in, the air thick with betrayal. Shoving my chair back with a screech, I fled the table, tears burning my eyes as they spilled down my cheeks. Behind me, the argument raged on, my parents' cold logic clashing with my grandparents' righteous outrage. About 15 minutes later, a soft knock sounded at my door. "Tiffany, can I come in, sweetheart?" It was Grandma Eleanor's voice, gentle and soothing. I didn't respond, but she entered anyway, sitting on the edge of my bed. Her warm hand began tracing comforting circles on my back, just as she had when I was a child afraid of thunderstorms. "Your grandfather and I have made a decision," she said softly, her voice steady with determination. "We're going to pay for your college education. All of it." I rolled over, wiping my tear-streaked face, my heart swelling with gratitude and disbelief. In that moment, surrounded by the unfamiliar walls of my too-small room, I knew I had allies who saw my worth, who believed in my potential, even when my own parents did not. My eyes widened in disbelief. "But that's too much money," I whispered, my voice trembling as tears streaked down my face. Grandma Eleanor's gentle smile radiated warmth as she reached out, brushing a damp lock of hair from my tear-stained cheeks. "Nonsense, sweetheart," she said softly, her voice a soothing balm to my wounded heart. "You deserve an education just as much as anyone else, more, even, because you've worked tirelessly for it without a shred of support from those who should have given it freely." For the first time that evening, a tentative smile broke through my sorrow, a fragile ray of hope piercing the darkness. In that quiet moment, something profound shifted within me. I realized I no longer needed my parents' approval to define my worth. I had people who believed in me, Grandma and Grandpa, whose unwavering support was a lifeline, and more importantly, I was beginning to believe in myself. College life was a revelation, a vibrant chapter where I finally stepped out from under the suffocating shadow of my parents' expectations. Freed from their constant comparisons and criticism, I thrived in the business program at State University. The campus, with its sprawling green lawns and ivy-covered buildings, felt like a world of possibilities. My professors praised my analytical mind, noting my knack for dissecting complex market trends and crafting innovative investment strategies. I discovered a natural talent I hadn't known I possessed, a gift for seeing patterns in data that others overlooked. Every weekend, I'd call Grandma and Grandpa, my voice bubbling with excitement as I shared my latest achievements, a high grade on a marketing project, a glowing comment from a professor, or a successful group presentation. Their pride was palpable through the phone, their encouragement a steady anchor in my new life. I hadn't spoken to my parents since leaving for college, and they made no effort to reach out either. The silence, though painful at first, became a strange sort of relief, allowing me to focus on my own path without their dismissive voices echoing in my mind. The only updates about my family came through my grandparents' calls, and one particular conversation turned my world upside down. "You won't believe what's happening with Jessica," Grandma said one chilly evening, her voice heavy with concern as I curled up on my dorm room bed, phone pressed to my ear. "She's completely gone off the rails. You know she got into Princeton. Your parents couldn't stop bragging about it. But once she arrived, away from their constant supervision, she just stopped caring about school altogether." I listened, stunned, as Grandma painted a vivid picture of my perfect sister's dramatic fall from grace. Jessica, it seemed, had discovered a world of parties, boys, and the intoxicating freedom to do whatever she pleased. The carefully curated image of the family genius crumbled in mere weeks. "Your mother called me in tears yesterday," Grandma continued, her tone a mix of pity and frustration. "The dean's office sent them a warning letter. Jessica's barely attending classes, and when she does show up, she's either late or hungover." I pressed the phone closer, my mind reeling. "What are Mom and Dad doing about it?" I asked. "Oh, they're beside themselves," Grandma replied. "They've tried everything, threatening to cut off her allowance, promising a new car if she improves her grades, even flying out to Princeton to talk some sense into her. But Jessica just laughs it off, like it's all a game." The irony was bitter and undeniable. After years of indulging Jessica's every whim, my parents had created someone who thrived on entitlement but buckled under responsibility. A month later, Grandma called with an even more shocking update. "Well, it finally happened," she said, her voice tinged with resignation. "Jessica got kicked out of Princeton. She failed nearly every class and racked up too many disciplinary infractions to count." I could hardly believe it. The golden child, the prodigy destined to bring glory to the Mitchell name, had been expelled after just 1 year. "She's moved back home," Grandma added. "Your parents are in shock. They keep insisting there must be some mistake, that the university didn't understand Jessica's special needs as a gifted student." Over the next few months, my regular calls with my grandparents revealed Jessica's new routine, sleeping until noon, going out with different guys every night, and treating our parents' house like a personal hotel. "Your father tried to get her to at least look for a job," Grandpa told me during one call, his voice heavy with disappointment. "She told him work was beneath someone of her intelligence level." I couldn't help but feel a mix of vindication and relief. While Jessica squandered her opportunities, I had escaped the suffocating weight of my parents' expectations and forged my own path, one built on resilience and determination. After graduation, I landed a coveted position as a junior investment analyst at Meridian Financial, one of the most respected firms in my hometown. The sleek, glass-walled office buzzed with ambition, and I dove into my work with enthusiasm. Grandma and Grandpa insisted I stay with them until I settled into my new life, and I gratefully accepted, their cozy bungalow a comforting contrast to the sterile environment of my childhood home. An unexpected reunion with my parents occurred one Saturday morning at Marshall's Grocery, where I was comparing prices on organic tomatoes, their vibrant red skins gleaming under the store's fluorescent lights. "Tiffany, is that really you?" My mother's voice, hesitant yet familiar, cut through the hum of the supermarket. I turned to find both my parents standing there, looking older than I remembered. Mom clutched her shopping cart like a lifeline, her knuckles pale, while Dad's eyes softened in a way I hadn't seen in years. "We've missed you so much," he said, his voice unusually gentle. "Why don't you come over for dinner sometime?" Part of me wanted to refuse, to remind them of how they'd dismissed my dreams, but curiosity, and perhaps a flicker of hope, won out. "Sure," I heard myself say, the words slipping out before I could second-guess it. The dinner was surreal, like stepping into a parallel universe. The same house, the same polished dining room table, but everything felt different. My parents couldn't stop praising my job at Meridian. Investment analyst at such a prestigious firm. Mom gushed, her eyes wide with an enthusiasm I'd never seen directed at me. James Wilson told me they only hire the best and brightest at Meridian. Across the table, Jessica's knuckles whitened around her fork. She had just quit her third retail job that year, her pattern of short-lived employment and long stretches of unemployment a stark contrast to my steady climb. I maintained a careful distance, accepting occasional invitations to family dinners, but keeping my emotional walls firmly in place. Jessica's behavior took another turn at one of our family gatherings. She burst through the front door, dragging along a tall, impeccably dressed man in his 30s. "Everyone, this is Charles," she announced triumphantly, her eyes gleaming with smug satisfaction. Charles was polite and well-spoken, clearly from wealth, with an easy charm that captivated the room. Jessica spent the evening shooting pointed looks my way, her voice dripping with condescension during dinner. "See, Tiffany," she said, smirking. "I bet you didn't expect me to find someone before you did, Miss Career Woman." I shrugged, taking a slow bite of Mom's pot roast, her attempt to provoke me feeling petty and childish. My parents, however, were smitten with Charles, hanging on his every word about his family's real estate empire and his elite private school education. When he left, promising to take Jessica to a high-end restaurant the following weekend, Mom pulled me aside, her voice alight with excitement. "Isn't it wonderful, Tiffany? Charles comes from such a good family. They own half the commercial properties downtown." Jessica's finally found her path to success. I didn't bother pointing out that dating a wealthy man wasn't exactly a career milestone. Some things, it seemed, never changed. My big break at Meridian came unexpectedly when I spotted a critical error in one of our major investment portfolios. The senior analysts had overlooked a dangerous pattern of high-risk investments that could have cost our clients millions. I spent 3 sleepless nights poring over data, my desk littered with coffee cups and spreadsheets, crafting a comprehensive report to present my findings. "Miss Mitchell, this is remarkable," Mr. Davidson, the CEO, said during the emergency meeting I'd called, his eyes scanning my detailed charts. "How did you catch this?" I walked them through the inconsistencies I'd noticed in the risk assessment models, my voice steady despite the nerves fluttering in my chest. "If we redistribute these investments now," I explained, "we can not only avoid losses but potentially increase returns by 12%. My strategy exceeded expectations. Within 6 months, the restructured portfolio showed a 15% increase in returns, earning glowing praise from clients and bolstering Meridian's reputation. I followed this success by developing an innovative investment algorithm that identified emerging market opportunities before our competitors, further cementing my value to the firm. Then came the day that changed everything. I was called into the boardroom, expecting a routine discussion. "Tiffany," Mr. Davidson began, his tone serious yet warm, "we're creating a new position, investment director, and we want you to fill it." I nearly dropped my coffee cup, the weight of his words sinking in. Investment director would place me in charge of all investment strategies for the firm, a massive promotion that vaulted me over several traditional career steps. The first people I called were Grandma and Grandpa, their joyous cheers echoing through the phone as they shared in my pride. At our next family dinner, I shared the news with my parents, bracing for their usual indifference. To my surprise, they were genuinely thrilled. "This calls for a celebration," Mom declared, her eyes sparkling. "You must have a party." "I was thinking of reserving a private room at La Monde," I said, referencing an upscale restaurant downtown known for its chandelier-lit dining room and exquisite cuisine. "I could invite the whole family and—" "Oh, no," Mom interrupted, waving her hand dismissively. "You should have it here. Your father and I will help organize everything. It'll be much more personal, more special. I'll invite all the relatives and order catering from that wonderful place on Oak Street." Her enthusiasm was infectious, and I found myself agreeing, transferring money to her account for the party expenses. She kept me updated with regular calls, detailing the menu and decorations with an excitement that felt almost foreign. The evening of the party began with such promise. I arrived at my parents' house in my favorite black cocktail dress, a string of pearls, a graduation gift from my grandparents, glimmering at my throat. The house was transformed, adorned with fresh flowers on every surface and elegant place settings lining the dining table. The caterers had outdone themselves, the air rich with the aroma of roasted lamb and herbed vegetables. Family members mingled in small groups, their laughter filling the room. Grandma and Grandpa enveloped me in warm hugs, Aunt Susan kissed my cheek, and Uncle Robert patted my shoulder with a proud smile. Jessica held court in the living room, resplendent in a stunning blue designer dress, with Charles at her side in a tailored suit, his polished demeanor drawing admiring glances. Once all the guests had arrived, we gathered around the grand dining table, the crystal chandelier casting a soft glow over the scene. I stood, champagne glass in hand, ready to share my achievement. "I'd like to thank everyone for coming tonight," I began, my voice steady with pride. But before I could continue, Mom leapt to her feet, her voice practically singing with excitement. "Oh, sweetie, she said, cutting me off mid-sentence. I froze, expecting her to announce my promotion. Instead, she beamed at the assembled family, her words shattering the moment. "We've gathered here today to celebrate a wonderful occasion. Our beautiful Jessica and her wonderful Charles are engaged to be married." The room erupted in gasps and congratulations. Jessica feigned a bashful smile, flaunting a massive diamond ring I hadn't noticed before, its facets catching the light like a beacon. Charles stood beside her, his proud grin radiating confidence. I sank back into my chair, my champagne glass nearly slipping from my numb fingers. The party I had paid for, the celebration meant to honor my hard-earned promotion, had been hijacked for Jessica's engagement. The betrayal stung, sharp and familiar, a painful echo of a lifetime spent to her shadow. As my mother's voice rang out, proclaiming Jessica's engagement, I looked around the dining table, my heart pounding with disbelief. The faces of my relatives glowed with genuine happiness, their smiles wide as they raised their glasses to toast the happy couple. Even my grandparents, always my steadfast allies, were caught up in the moment, offering warm congratulations to Jessica and Charles. The realization hit me like a cold wave crashing over a rocky shore. None of them knew this was supposed to be my celebration. My parents had orchestrated a cruel deception, inviting everyone to an engagement party, not a promotion party. They had taken my money, my moment, and twisted it into yet another stage for Jessica's glory. My chair scraped harshly against the polished hardwood floor as I stood, anger burning like wildfire in my throat. I opened my mouth to speak, but before a single word could escape, I felt my father's iron grip clamp around my wrist. He pulled me close, his smile fixed for the benefit of the guests, a perfect mask of familial warmth. But his whispered words were sharp and cold as a winter blade. "Don't you dare make a scene," he hissed through clenched teeth, his breath hot against my ear. "If you ruin this for your sister, we'll cut you off completely. No inheritance, no family, nothing. Sit down and smile." I yanked my hand free, my pulse roaring in my ears. "No," I said, my voice slicing through the cheerful chatter like a knife. The room fell silent, forks pausing midair, eyes turning toward me in stunned curiosity. Jessica's smug smile froze, her diamond ring glinting mockingly under the chandelier's glow. "Everyone needs to know the truth," I continued, my voice growing stronger with each word, fueled by years of suppressed hurt. "This party was supposed to celebrate my promotion to investment director at Meridian Financial. I paid for everything, the food, the flowers, the decorations, all of it. My parents took my money and turned my celebration into an engagement party for Jessica without even telling me." Gasps rippled through the room, followed by a low murmur of whispers. Aunt Susan's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with shock. "That's not true," Mom interjected, her face flushing a deep crimson as she leapt to her feet. "Tiffany, stop this nonsense right now." I met her gaze unflinchingly, my resolve unshaken. "Show them the invitation, Aunt Susan," I said calmly, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. "What does it say?" Aunt Susan fumbled in her purse, her hands trembling as she pulled out a cream-colored card, its elegant script illuminated by the soft candlelight. It says, "Join us in celebrating the engagement of Jessica Mitchell and Charles Aldridge," she read, her voice faltering. Charles stood slowly, his face darkening, the polished charm replaced by a storm of disbelief. "You told me this was a family dinner where we'd announce our engagement," he said, his voice low and accusing as he turned to my parents. "You never said anything about stealing your sister's celebration." Jessica's expression crumbled, her confidence giving way to panic. "Charlie, baby, let me explain," she began, reaching for his arm, but he cut her off with a sharp gesture. "No, I've seen enough," he said, his tone final. He turned to me, his eyes softening with genuine regret. "I'm sorry, Tiffany. I had no idea." Then, facing Jessica, he delivered the blow that shattered her carefully constructed facade. "This engagement is off. I won't be part of a family that treats people this way." He strode out of the room, the front door closing with a resolute thud behind him. Jessica's shriek pierced the air, her face contorted with rage and humiliation. "Look what you've done," she screamed, pointing a trembling finger at me. "You've ruined everything. You're just jealous because I found someone and you're still alone." Her words, dripping with venom, only fueled my clarity. I laughed, the sound sharp and incredulous, echoing in the stunned silence. "Jealous," I said, shaking my head. "I'm the investment director of a major financial firm. I don't need to steal someone else's party or trap a rich man into marriage to feel successful." "That's enough," Dad roared, standing so abruptly his chair nearly toppled. His face was a mask of fury, his voice booming across the room. "You've gone too far, Tiffany. You're no longer part of this family. Consider yourself disinherited." The threat, meant to wound, only strengthened my resolve. I opened my mouth to respond, but before I could, Grandpa's voice thundered across the table, commanding attention like a judge's gavel. "Actually, David," he said, rising to his feet with a quiet dignity, Grandma standing beside him, her eyes blazing with determination. "Your inheritance won't matter much. Eleanor and I have already changed our will. Everything we have is going to Tiffany." Mom gasped, her hand clutching her chest as if struck. "She's the only one in this family with any integrity," Grandma added, her voice firm yet trembling with emotion. "We've watched for years as you've favored Jessica, pushed Tiffany aside, and dismissed her worth. No more." The room descended into chaos. Relatives began to leave, their hurried footsteps and embarrassed murmurs filling the air. Jessica fled upstairs, her sobs echoing down the hall. My parents stood frozen, their faces pale with shock, unable to process the unraveling of their carefully curated narrative. I picked up my purse, my movements deliberate, and walked to the door, holding my head high. The weight of years of neglect and betrayal fell away with each step. "Goodbye," I said, my voice clear and unwavering, not looking back. "Don't contact me again." The door closed behind me, the cool night air washing over me like a cleansing tide, carrying away the last remnants of a family that had never truly valued me. That was 3 years ago. I haven't spoken to my parents or Jessica since that night. Through the grapevine, whispers from distant relatives and updates from my grandparents, I learned that Jessica still lives at home, her dreams of wealth and status shattered along with her engagement to Charles. Bitter and directionless, she drifts through life, blaming everyone but herself for her failures. My parents reached out once or twice, their messages laced with half-hearted apologies, but I blocked their numbers, choosing to protect the peace I'd fought so hard to claim. My grandparents, however, remain my rock, my anchor in a world that once felt so unsteady. Every Sunday, we gather for dinner at their cozy bungalow, the table laden with Grandma's homemade lasagna and Grandpa's favorite red wine. Their pride in my achievements shines brighter than any praise my parents ever withheld. Sometimes I reflect on that fateful night and realize it was the best thing that could have happened. It severed the chains of seeking approval from those who would never give it, freeing me to embrace my own worth. Last week, I was named the youngest CEO in Meridian Financial's history, a milestone that felt like the culmination of every late night, every bold decision, every moment of perseverance. When I shared the news with my grandparents, Grandma's eyes brimmed with happy tears, and Grandpa opened a bottle of champagne he'd been saving for a special occasion. He raised his glass, his voice thick with emotion. To authenticity, he toasted, his eyes locking with mine, and to finding your own path. I raised my glass in return, a wide smile spreading across my face. In that moment, surrounded by the love and belief of those who mattered most, I knew I was exactly where I was meant to be, standing tall in a life I had built, not one defined by someone else's expectations. Please feel free to comment below if you liked this. Remember to like and subscribe for more.